Today is election day. U.S. President Donald Trump running against the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden. Evidently, this seems to be, unfortunately, one of the more popular presidential races in modern times. I'm 50 years old, and I think this has to be, in my lifetime, the most excitable, more anxious time that I've ever seen. Even though I'm not anxious or nervous about it, I don't vote. I don't play the divisive political atmosphere. I don't entertain it. And the problem is that I see both the Democratic and Republican parties as a singular unit. I don't see them as a duality of sorts, where the majority of, unfortunately, the majority of American public do. And I think this is a mistake. And it's meant to be this way so that you, the American public, will stay inherently divided and warring within each other. This is just one atmosphere, one construct in which the human race here in the United States conflict with each other, and tied into the religious divide and the racial divide, which all simultaneously happen at once because the political, religious, and racial atmospheres all have a tie-in to each other. But going back to today and tonight's electoral process, I want to say the following, is that if there's anybody out there who watches this video and wants to understand that when it comes to certain issues, one of them being foreign policy, another being the Pentagon, another being the foreign lobby institutes, corporate institutes, the degradation of our social sectors, including healthcare, Social Security, and education, they act as a singular unit. And also the Federal Reserve. There's very few items in which both the left and right will actually argue for the better or for worse. And the reason why they don't argue about the issues I raised is because they have a vested interest in doing so. And it mostly ties into financial interests. I did a video yesterday, which was pretty more depressing video, but something that I see for the future of this country, in which the financial interests regarding the Democratic and Republican parties lay with the foreign lobbyists and the corporate lobbyists. And these are the people like financial speculators, foreign lobbyists, foreign lobby institutes like the APAC lobby or the Gulf lobby that persuade our politics to conflict with Arab states in the Middle East. These have a long-standing effect upon the American people because that money goes into the Pentagon. That money goes into the military-industrial complex. And, of course, the special interest groups of the military corporations that a lot of these high-ranking congressional officials have financial interest in. And where does that money come out of? It comes out of the Education Department, the Social Security program, the educational program. All these are public services that are very lacking today all around this country. There are teachers coming into the fall program where they have to buy the books on their own dollar. They don't have enough chalkboard material, erasers, chalk, markers, pencils, pens. The Department of Education gets a grant annually, but that grant basically is very uneven because a lot of that grant money goes, of course, to the top officials, and then it trickles down into I don't know how many schools there are public. We're talking about public schools, not private. Private gets their own funding. Public education, that goes to specific states where there, for example, like a state like Michigan will get a huge grant as opposed to like North Dakota, because Michigan caters to a large populace, North Dakota does not. But you can see where I'm going with this. It's uneven, the financial disparity within these states. And of course, Social Security, which is depleted almost upon every annual year. I can't tell you the amount and uneven monthly checks that the majority of our elderly get, in which the elderly in this country are neglected terribly. We put them in homes. We don't have much in the way of personal care when it comes to people taking care of their elderly. This is not a general statement, of course. But we have a high percentage of elderly people living in these programs and institutions that are, some of these institutions are fantastic. And then you have these really horrifying stories about neglect and abuse in a lot of these low-income facilities. That's because a lot of these people and institutions in low-income areas are not properly taken care of, because the economic digress within these institutions are being distributed to the programs I just outlined before regarding either the Pentagon, foreign lobbyists, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have the healthcare industry, which is abhorrent at best. I mean, we have a terrible, underfunded healthcare industry in this country, which is really just a shame, because we have some of the best healthcare institutions in the world, specifically in cities like New York, Chicago, California, Nevada, Texas. These are states that are just begging their lobbyists for money, begging their congressional elects for money. And yet you have these false, transparent declarations made by the Democratic and Republican parties, who are basically just catering to the vote. They don't care to take care of the constituents that really need it. They're taking care of the people that fund their electoral processes, giving as much as $10,000 or going to a dinner plate of $2,000 to some congressional leader within their own district. These people are whores, basically pimps. They're liars at best. All they're doing is basically catering to the people that have money. And if you are part of the public, you don't have money and you don't count. This is the reason why I don't vote. And when they say that your vote counts, tell that to the last election, because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but Donald Trump won the electoral vote. Now, the electoral vote is rather important because you have states that have a high amount of electoral votes compared to other states that don't. And California, New York have the most voting electoral votes, which is pretty uneven, because they also have the highest population per rate, and they're basically Democratic. They're always Democratic, which is basically the reason why you have an electoral vote and a popular vote. Either way, it doesn't matter. If you had Clinton in office, we probably would have more in the way of conflicts in the Middle East. Trump basically is destroying the country from within, depleting the financial sectors when it comes to jobs, when it comes to the handling of the coronavirus, which, by the way, was handled resoundingly terrible by both the Democratic and Republican Party. I'm not going to get into the details of that. But when it comes to governors and when it comes to the federal and state, local electors, they basically dropped the ball. And I can speak from experience, because here in New York, we had Governor Cuomo and we had Pelosi out in California. We had mayors here in New York, and we had electoral leaders that basically during the period of Chinatown, they were going around saying that you should go out and socialize, knowing full well the coronavirus was basically COVID-19 was a novel virus. We didn't know much about it. We should have prepared a heck of a lot months prior in advance, and we wouldn't have the problems that we have today. So basically, the problems that New York will now face is not from the virus alone. I think that's going to come. I think that's in the back burner. The real problems will be the financial services that are closing down. People who are going to become homeless because they can't pay the rent, because the back rent now is extended to December. And then instead of 4 months rent, you owe 8 months rent, going all the way back to March, in which Cuomo basically didn't eliminate the, which he could have done, which the bill was proposed to him, and he neglected to sign off on it, regarding the Democrats here in New York who tried to implore the governor to take care or to get funding from the federal government to take care of the rent, backloaded rent for the millions of Americans here in New York. And he basically neglected to do that. So now you have 8 months rent due to these landlords who basically are not going to get it, because the stimulus package that you're supposed to get at the first time around was only $1,600, which you should have responded by protesting in the streets, acting as a singular unit, but you didn't do that. You basically said to yourself, wow, this is great, free money, and you didn't even bother to pay the electric bill, the rent bill, which probably wouldn't have paid the rent. The rents here are extraordinarily, far greater than $1,600. And now the second stimulus package, zero, because the Republican Party didn't want to sign off on it, because they thought the Democrats didn't give or didn't want to offer enough money. Both of these people don't care about you, because if it came from, say, Israel, or it came from the Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, heck, Donald Trump signed off, I think, $1.7 billion, which was over a 10-year program, to Saudi Arabia. And guess what they did with the money? They used that money to buy off on military programs to be used to kill people in the largest humanitarian crisis in Yemen, which most of that money came from your pocket. And you don't care, because you don't know about it, because the legacy media won't tell you about it. What will they tell you? How big Kim Kardashian's ass really is. And basically, Tom Brady is throwing enough touchdowns for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Yankees and Mets, by the way, basically failed at the playoffs. The Mets didn't make it, and the Yankees still suck because they lost to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. That's more important, because you people are ignorant. And the horrifying fact is, I think there's a high percentage of willful ignorance in this population, not just in New York, but around this country. Why? Because we have a terrible educational system that don't teach you anything, and we have a legacy media bought out by the intelligence agencies, bought out by lobbyists that will only tell you what you want to hear based on human constructs such as religion, racism, and politics, to keep you divided, to keep you angry at each other. Because God forbid, if you ask yourselves, hey, we're being programmed to hate each other, when it should be the very people who are banking of this way. And instead of taking to the streets by the millions, which you should have done right from the start, no, you basically will tear down your own cities because you feel that Black Lives Matters, or the Boogaloo Boys, or right wing, left wing, you matter. You don't. You never have. You never will. And heaven forbid if one day the light goes on upstairs and you say, hey, we're being divided on purpose, because it's actually class warfare. This is not about race. This is not about politics. This is not about religion. This is about the 1% and the 99%. But the 1% have got it right, because they're the ones in charge. They have the power to manipulate you, to keep you stupid, to keep you wanting, to keep you hungry, to keep you uneducated. And it's working, because guess what? we're still basically fighting and tearing into each other based upon the divisive human constructs that were made to do just that, and it's working. You don't believe me? Take a look outside your window, go outside for 5 minutes, and you'll basically see people walking right up to you saying, who'd you vote for? Does it matter? No, because guess what? It's us versus them. But for now, it's us versus them while they get to sit back in their $1 million mansions, go in front of the TV, and cater to the human constructs that were made to divide you on purpose. And it's working. For you to still vote for the people that continue to conflict and do war in your name, our name, the United States of America, a government for the people, by the people, they're not for the people anymore. We're still in Afghanistan. We're basically destroying Iraq, Syria, Libya, catering to the foreign lobbies of Israel and Saudi Arabia, to the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. Saudi Arabia being the nation that promotes Wahhabi ideals, a terrorism-led country that is destroying the religion of Islam with its Wahhabi ideals, Israel and the Palestine conflict. What have they done for us? What do they continue to do for us? Nothing. They spy on us. They come to this country, report back to their country. And yes, spying works both ways. But is that what friends do? Does a friend actually put a conference that caters to its own politics and not ours? That basically persuades both the Democratic and Republican parties to do their bidding? To commit young men and women into the American armed forces and to fight against Arab countries for decades so that they can expand their country and so that Saudi Arabia can destroy the Shiite minority? Support our troops. What a dead declaration. Support our troops. Yeah, I support them to stay home and not fight for these corporate oligarchs that don't care about you. They don't care. No matter how much they beg for you for donations or to go into their local town halls, like if you matter, like they care. They live in $1 million mansions while you live in the projects, or you're basically in a 1-bedroom studio flat paying $2,500 a month, barely making the rent, and basically you have to scrap off your 401k plan or basically have to borrow money from your grandmother or mother who lives out of state, basically sending you a $200 check per month so you can leave the phone on. The minimum wage in this country is abhorrent. Our quality of life is being depleted right here where it counts inside the United States. And you continue to vote for the very people who are devouring your life, as well as the others around the world. When are you going to wake up and realize that we are the only thing that matter in defeating the monolith called the U.S. federal government? It's going to take a matrix type of scenario where the lights go on and you basically admit that for years of your life, you have been manipulated, lied by the very people who put forth this atmosphere, these elements into your mind. Through years of training and manipulation, it's programming you to think that these divisive concepts like racism, politics, religion are all natural, and they're not. These are learned applications, and they're divisive. They're not inclusive of everybody. And when I say we don't need religion, that we don't need spirituality. When I say that we don't need government, that we don't need community. When I say we don't need racism, that we don't need culture. We need a global hegemony of people. But it has to start here in the United States. We're the most polarized, divided, conflicted, sectarian country on the face of the earth. And we're proud to show it to you every day on national TV. The Nazis, led by propaganda Reichsminister Joseph Goebbels, I would agree with the late John Judge when he says that he would give up his saluting arm for the invention of TV because TV is basically poison, led by the few corporate interests that own TV. It is garbage. You're not getting news that matter. You're getting news that matter to the corporate oligarchs and to the intelligence apparatuses that want to perform a narrative. Whether it be through CNN, Fox, CNBC, take your pick. Name one. And the TV that's on today, these shows that are basically degradation of the human life, these reality shows that monitor a person 24 hours a day to show you that they would commit acts of debauchery for a little bit of amount of money or for even fame, vanity. It's a degradation of the human spirit. Because that's what matters. Right up here. And here. Your heart and mind. And if you destroy that, you destroy the person. And if you destroy the person, you destroy the people. And if you destroy the people, you destroy the country. And the only thing that's left standing are the people who helped to destroy you. And you are supporting the very people who are doing just that right at this instance by voting and supporting them financially on the day that matters, today, election day. It's fraud day. Actually, they should actually rename it April Fool's Day because the joke is not played on them. The joke is played on us, the people, the ones that are supposed to matter.